I should probably make this so that we're both equal. There we go. Now we can see both of us very equally. Oh, and I should probably just go full screen. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we were talking about dreams and realizations. And, I think one of the big things that stands out in dreams, and you were pointing out, is death. You're saying that it's kind of a rebirth. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I noticed that too with just about everything because I noticed that when when I would do tarot cards, which I know is completely random and off the topic, but I used to do them. And I know when I used to do them, when you get the death card, everybody freaks out. Ah, we're gonna die. No, it's not the case. It's when you get the death card, surprisingly, it actually means rebirth and renewal. A lot of people don't understand that. And I just when you said that about the whole renewal process when something dies, it makes sense. And it's necessary. But back to the point, no, but well my life I think what you were saying was about the religion piece. What were you saying about that?
The religion piece. Um.
You were talking about your spiritual awakening.
Okay. So I told you the dream, and to recap it quick for the video, it got to a point where I'm driving in a car smoking a cigarette. It's a convertible, and I look over and there's no one driving the car, and we're just flying down these residential roads. These kids have to jump out of the way. It's nighttime, but it's like they're waiting at the bus stop, and they jump out of the way, and then we get to a T intersection. I know we're gonna crash, and we do, and we hit a tree in the yard, and then I fly out of the seat in slow motion, and a tree pierces my neck, and I can feel it the whole time, and then I wake up on a stretcher feeling catharsis, like total, like this, like renewal of some kind. And then I woke up, and what I thought about that dream was um, that was what my life was like. 'Cause this was shortly after I dropped out of college, and I was very depressed. And it was during the winter before the summer where I had my spiritual awakening, and this was sort of the build up to it. It started with this dream and with listening to Bjork, and Bjork has some very interesting songs. She sings about very interesting ideas that I'd never considered. It kind of opened my eyes to certain things involving death and rebirth, for example, but also other things. And this dream told me basically that I had crashed, or I was crashing. I was in the process of crashing, but that almost needed to happen in order for something new to come up. And that's what Thanatos means to me. Thanatos is the death instinct. I think Freud coined the word, or maybe it's an older word than that. At least Freud used it. But um, it's the death instinct. And what I think of is exactly what you're talking about with the death tarot card, is that if the death instinct was a god, it would also be a god of transformation, because when we something in order for something new to come about, something old has to be destroyed in order to kind of make room for that new thing. And then I told you about the Tetris blocks while I was still in college, when I was very depressed and I was failing all my classes, just in a very dark place. I had this kind of a vision in my mind of Tetris blocks falling randomly until they built up to the top, and then it was game over. And I thought that was like what my life was like. I just let things happen randomly until it was out of my control and the game was over, and then it all fell apart. And then the still small voice kind of said to me, well, maybe once everything's destroyed, you can rebuild yourself with a strong foundation. And that's what I ended up doing years later. And I hadn't thought about it until years later, and then I kind of was like, wow, I actually did it. And so, one more piece I want to tell you about. So, after the spiritual awakening in the summer, which just involved, there was a moment. I was sitting in my car in my parents' driveway. It was nighttime, and I was listening to a song by Bjork, and she said, one of the lyrics that she just repeats over and over in the song is, "It's not meant to be a struggle. It's not meant to be a strife. If you're struggling, undo."
Hmm.
And I, while I'm listening to this, I'm ruminating. I'm thinking about all the embarrassing, shameful things I said and did that day because I felt like I did those every day, and then I would just torture myself about them. And I was doing that, and then that lyric kind of broke through, and I thought, it's not supposed to be a struggle. So if it's not meant to be, because I'm struggling, if it's not meant to be this way, well, what is it supposed to be like? And then I just like suddenly I could see the color in the world come back and like wind blowing through the trees, and it was very sensory. It was very much like just seeing the world as it is and feeling okay about it. And somehow in that moment, it's like that shift happened, and then the next 3 days of my life, in that just right after that moment, three very significant things happened that never would have been able to happen before. The first, I don't remember what we talked about, but with my best friend at the time, we were driving somewhere and we just had a really good conversation that was deep and probably vulnerable in some ways on my part. And it was just a great connection, and it was like something that we maybe had done in the past, but it was so rare, not as intense as this, and it was very, maybe intense isn't the right word, but just generally like we felt connected. It was nice. And then the next day, my other friend, who's also a very close friend at the time, we were at someone's house. I think it was where he was living at the time. I just remember there was a hot tub. I don't think we were in the hot tub because, anyways, in the moment we're smoking like we always smoked Al Capones for some reason, even though cigarettes are way cheaper. We should have been smoking cigarettes, but we always smoked Al Capones. And we were smoking them, and we were telling each other about dreams that we had. And then he said something to me like, you always have all these deep insights about your dreams, and I just dream about random crap that doesn't mean anything. And then I said to him, no, I think your dream actually means a lot. And then I laid out like I just said very bluntly, coming from, like, I can't remember how I said it. It was like it was just truth coming out of my mouth, where normally I would feel like I have to pretend to be something I'm not. It was like suddenly the veil was lifted and I was just speaking something true to him, and it had to do with, no, like a woman that he was starting to date, but he was unsure of himself. And I just laid out something like, yeah, no, your dream means like this is very meaningful for you, and you don't want to end up like your parents who got divorced. You want to have like a good life and a good marriage. But it came out in such a way where he was like dumbfounded and his mouth was just dropped, and then he kind of looks up at me and he just reaches out his hand and to shake my hand. And it was like respect in that moment where I felt like a worm most of the time around him and my other friends and my family and everyone, because I had dropped out of college and I was doing nothing with my life and felt like a failure. Well, this was like a little moment of like truth and respect, and it was just very good. And then just to put the icing on the cake, that night he slept with his girlfriend for the first time, which was like good for him. And then the third night was me and some friends and my sister went to the state fair. I think it must have been. And it was nighttime, and there was the swings, the tree with the swings that goes in a circle, and then it goes up and up and up and up. It raises
Mm-hmm.
way up and then it goes down. Well, me and my sister get on the swings, and it goes up, and then she gets scared of the heights. And normally I'm scared of heights, but I was in this mode because the spiritual awakening gave me a feeling of confidence that I didn't have before, where it's like I could face things I was afraid of and overcome them. And so I was afraid of the heights, but then I leaned into it in a way where I felt just really happy and free. And she was feeling scared, so she like reaches out her hand, so then I hold her hand and help her to feel safe while she's in, high up in the swings. And that was just a really cool moment too. And so I had those 3 days, three really awesome moments with three different people. three of the closest people to me at that time. And yeah, it was great. And so like I said, like I was just saying with being able to overcome my fears, I felt like I had a guardian angel because I came from, I felt like I was in a deep pit. I was all the way at the bottom of the pit, and I thought my life was over because I was just stuck at the bottom of the pit. And a lot of people think of, getting in a pit is you have to dig your way or climb your way back up out of the pit, and it's like the struggle you have to do. Like the deeper you dig, the harder it is going to be to come back out. And the best thing to do is stop digging early so that you don't have. Well, I dug so far down that it's like I found a trap door at the bottom of the pit that led into a new world. It's almost like I had to go so deep in this pit that everything in me was just destroyed in order for me to be reborn on the other side of the trapdoor. And so my guardian angel was kind of like Thanatos or like the god of death. It was a god of transformation. My angel led me to believe that in the darkest moment comes the light, basically the light of transformation or something that you didn't expect is going to happen to totally transform your life. So I felt like if I fail in the future, I'm just going to come back stronger every time. Excuse me.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's really strong, actually. And do you think that's affected you today, even too? You think it's
Mm-hmm. So I became depressed again a few years later, living in Fridley. I had gone back to school, completed a 2-year degree to do AutoCAD, and I was working in the field and living with my sister in Fridley, and my life devolved because, well, for one, my sister was in a very dark place because she had just broken up with her boyfriend shortly before we moved in, and she's just a prickly person in general. So like, this thing would happen where it's like I'd get home from work, I'd look at her on the couch in the living room, she'd have a scowl on her face, and I'd just be like, well, I'm not going in there. I'm gonna go hide in my room. And then she would resent me without, kind of secretly resent me for not spending time with her when it's like, well, you really don't look like you like me very much, so I don't understand what you want from me. She's like, I heard this phrase once. She's like a cactus that wants a hug. so,
nice?
so I became very isolated, and I would just come home from work, either drink beer, smoke weed, and play video games, and that was my life. And at work, I was very isolated because just like all through K through 12, as I was very to myself and quiet. So I didn't have work friends. I didn't really hang out with friends outside of work except for one every once in a while. But I was very isolated and depressed. But I had that guardian angel with me where I felt like, I'm somehow going to overcome this and come out the other end stronger. And that made it made it way easier than the first time I was depressed. It really did. And then in the hospital, I still had that, but like I also had like before that I had the guardian angel thing, but I thought of it as, I don't know, maybe psychological, like a psychological guardian angel. I didn't really believe that it was a real spiritual being that was over guiding me, or I still wasn't sure if God existed. Well, as you know, my schizophrenia really opened my eyes to the idea that God really does exist and he really is watching out for me and watches out for everybody. And so that on top of the guardian angel was just like, the hospital was a cakewalk. Being depressed in college was the hardest part of my life by far, like times 10 of what the hospital was. Even though the hospital took a long time, it took a big chunk of my life.
It did to us all, but in a lot of ways, it made us better.
Yeah.
Um, you know, You've been through a lot. I think one of the biggest things, though, is you're able to take. At least what I noticed, 'cause I've seen a lot when it comes to people and their mental illness. And one thing that's really stands out with you is that you take and embrace it, and you see it as a positive, which is very cool because a lot of people, it seems, you hear someone say, "Oh, I got depression." Usually, it's in the sense like, "Oh, I got depression," you know, and it's hindering me, which, or in your case, schizophrenia, and it's nice to see someone have a positive twist on something for a change.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, and I don't think it's always, sunshine and rainbows, but I think there is a lot of good that does come from a mental illness that people don't have. Like, if people don't have it, because for a couple of different reasons, not just because of the mental illness. That's a different story. I'm talking about in the sense that we understand what it's like to endure. Um, a person that doesn't have schizophrenia or doesn't have depression, um, I mean, don't get me wrong, people go through hell all the time, but we go through hell with another time. We got hell in hell. So it's a challenge, and I think for people like, that have the mental illness or even slight mental illness or whatever it is a challenge, and we're able to come out of it stronger.
I just hope that more people are able to do that. I wonder about, because like you said, there's a lot of people who have these mental illnesses who are very negative about them, and I I don't know that I'm like you said, I'm probably in the minority of people who get the benefit, and I don't know if it's just what I've been exposed to or something innate in me. I don't know, or if it's God and God just hasn't decided to show Himself to those people yet. It could be any of those things, but um, oh, I had a point I was gonna make. I forgot what it was. But with being, oh yeah, it was. The book of Job in the Bible. Have you heard about it at all?
I'm not really big on the Bible too much. I know some ideas of it. I haven't read it. I'll admit it.
Well, I haven't read it either. I've just heard things, so I kind of know what it
Well, I've
is.
heard things. I know the guy died for us on the cross, and then he was, resurrected as the first zombie ever recorded. I understand that.
Well, the book of Job is about a guy named Job, spelled Job, so it's like job, but it's pronounced Job, I guess. And
Okay.
he was got like basically God's favorite because he was so pious and he was so prosperous and very devotional to God. And the devil basically makes a bet with God. He says, your favorite son here is, great and all, but I bet if he didn't have his family and his health and, his money and his children and all these positive things, he'd turn away from you. He would become a bad person. And God's like, no, no, he wouldn't. And the devil's like, you want to make a bet? And the God's like, sure. God lets the devil take all those things from Job and put him through hell. His family dies. He gets sick. I think he gets boils at some point. Like he just loses everything. And then the idea though is, how does Job respond to this? And Job wrestles with it. Like he isn't just automatically saying one or the other, that either everything sucks, God's no good, and he's also not saying yes, God is the best, I know I'll come out of this just fine on the other side. He's wrestling with it, and he's saying, how can this happen? Why is God putting me through this? But at the same time, he never does lose his faith. He keeps his faith the whole time, and then eventually God does reward him with, I don't know, something like 10 times what he had in the beginning. Now he has that again. He has a new
Oh, wow.
family, and everything is restored to him. And so I think about that with me and my guardian angel. It's like, yeah, I'm going through hell, but it's like I still have this unshakable belief that there's something greater that's going to help me through this. Or like with my schizophrenia, I had this unshakable belief, and I don't even know why. It started intellectually of like, well, I don't think a universe based on bad or bad things could ever sustain itself. It would just tear itself into pieces, and that would be that. So it must be good. So God must be good. And that somehow stuck with me. That even through all the bad stuff, I was like, no, God must be good, because otherwise, how could any of this exist? At least that's what I thought. But I think it's something deeper that I haven't uncovered yet that kept my faith.
I think one of the big things a lot of people, I know when I say a lot of people, I'm specifically one of those people, um, forget is that you brought this up about how like there's good and bad in the universe and how
Yeah.
it would tear itself apart, and that is that there's yin and yang. I know that's a cliche, but at the same time, though, it's true. In order for there to be good, there has to be bad. In order for there to be bad, there has to be good. If one of them only existed, it wouldn't be realistic.
Hmm?
It would just everything would go out of control, chaos. So that's the thing is that having both of them in together, like you were saying, for example, Job, he didn't lose his faith, but he was going through hell and he took the bad with the good.
Yeah. The way
But at this hmm?
the way I think of it is there's the yin and the yang, right? There's bad and there's good,
Mhm.
and they're dancing together. They're because the yin yang symbol is a symbol of motion. It's like two teardrops kind of circling each other, but it's just a snapshot, so they're just sitting there. But really, it's a dance, and they're going back and forth, and it's like, what is the aim of this dance? Well, the aim, I think, is good. So in a sense, even the bad is allied with the good to make more good. And the reason I say that is because I think there is good and bad in the universe, right? There's good and
Mhm.
bad, and yet we can live here and have all these great things that we can be grateful for. And so you can almost say, if the world sprung up, like the Taoists say, first there was one, which was undifferentiated matter. Two, then there was two, which was yin and yang. Three was the dance between yin and yang, and then from that, the whole universe was born. I think from yin and yang, from good and bad, comes the good that is in the universe. And I want to throw one more thing at you. The
Mhm.
one more thing is, I thought about this a few months ago, and I talked about it at AA, and something you said made me think of it again. If there's four scenarios, one scenario is the universe is bad, and so I'm going to act bad.
Mm.
And that is just a bad place. We can imagine that that would be just hell. Then the opposite scenario is the universe is good and everyone acts good. So I decide to act good. God, that's fine and all, but it seems kind of boring.
Right.
It's not much going on. Third scenario is the universe is good, but I'm going to act bad. Well, that's just a selfish scenario. It's like, the universe is good. I'm going to take advantage of it, but it's still kind of boring in a way because that's going to get old. The
Right.
last scenario, which is that the universe is bad, but I'm going to act good.
Hmm.
In that scenario, yeah, it's hell, but everything I do is to spite all the good I do is to spite the evil that exists. And there's going to be a lot of meaning to that. Like you can just imagine you're in a terrible scenario and you do the noble thing in spite of everything. Like, wow. And I'm not saying the universe is bad, but I'm saying there's bad in the universe. And so I think that's one reason bad exists is because then that allows for the most powerful emotions as well as acts that people can do is to show strength and nobility and grace in the face of utter chaos and evil. Like without bad that couldn't exist. If it was a good universe with good, it would just be bland, boring nonsense. Like we would get sick of it.
It's true. It's the flavor of life.
Yep.
You know, another thing that kind of brings up with this too is that a lot of people, you know, they walk around negative,
Mm,
and I'll admit I was one of them too.
me too.
And when we used to walk around, we would run wondering why could we not find a positive person, or why was there positive? We couldn't find positivity. And in my eyes, and I wholeheartedly believe that negative energy is like, well, it is. Negative energy attracts negative energy. Where if someone's positive, positive energy attracts positive energy. Um, I think there was something done where they put two people in the room that were negative, one negative, one positive, and the negative and the positive people were talking, and the negative overwhelmed the positive.
I think I've heard
And
that that's exactly what tends to happen. Yeah.
that's because negative is so easy to go to.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to say, "Hey, this is somebody else's fault," or "Hey, this is something wrong," or "Hey, this is the woe of life," versus actually taking the time and, thinking about, well, what is good and how could this be good? What are some of the things, basically positive and negative list of things. It's easier to think of positive or of negative things than it is a positive.
Yep. Down is easier than up.
Mhm. Exactly. And I think one of the things is that now if you were to remove those negative people altogether, this is something my mother always tells me, is that if we didn't have negative times and we only had positive times, we wouldn't know what positive is, because we would never experience the negative times to be like, "Oh, that's a positive time and we're in a negative time.
Mm,
This is negativity." So we hate negativity, but I remember when it was being positive. Now, if it's always positive, we're not going to be like, "Oh, we remember when it's being positive," because it's always been that way.
yep.
Vice versa with negativity, it won't always be negative. And that's one thing I love about saying this too, is that um, you know, life is like a roller coaster, or it can be like, dips, or it can be, whatever.
Hmm.
Basically, it can be a roller coaster, a smooth ride, or it can be a bumpy ride. And what I mean by that is there's the up is positive and down is negative. You're going to have a little bit of everything so often, and it comes in waves. So not if when something you seem like is down, when something seems so negative that you're about to give up on things, at least I know this, when I feel like that, it's like my therapist tells me it's going to get better. Just experience it, feel it, and then when I come to think about it, you know, an hour later, things start to get better. You can only go down so far. And I had a point at one point. No, but I mean, these are things that I learned, and this is just all what sparked in my mind when you were talking about that. Um, I just think it's so easy for us to get caught up in the negative. Another thing too, if we want to go segue here a little bit, um, mainstream media, or you know, what do you call it? What would you say? Just things that are out in public, like like the stereotypical stuff.
Yeah.
It's all a lot of negativity. Like, I mean, how often do you watch the news, if anybody watches the news anymore? But when people do watch the news, how often do you see like, oh, what is it? It's usually like this. It's like, okay, so the world is going to end today. The nuclear bomb is going to go off about 5 o'clock today. By the way, there was a cat in the tree that we saved, and it was okay. By the way, on top of that, there was a submarine that sunk and 1,000 people died.
Hmm.
10 what? It's like, they focus on the negative, and that's what seems like a lot of the world does. When
Yeah.
really and truly, the ultimate aspect of it, the bigger view of it is there's more positivity out there than we care to see. All the negative we hear about is just a minute piece of how much positive stuff happens out there. But since society pressures us on seeing the negative, it's like we're stuck on that. And it kind of ruins us. That's why I got rid of my TV a long time ago. I mean, I use my TV, I have one, but I use it for video games only, or movies, or anime. But, I mean, I don't even use it hardly at all. I use my computer. But I don't read the news. I don't listen to the news. I don't do that because I remember every single time I listened to the news, I felt like I wanted to jump off a cliff afterwards after hearing it.
Well, there's one piece that, well, something you said, how there's all these catastrophes and we're focusing on them is this is something that I think it's positivity is a hard thing because it takes a certain attitude. So it's like something bad can happen, but if your attitude is good, you can find the positive in it, or at least know that everything's going to be okay. And that's
And
that's
that
that's kind of what I wanted. There was something when I was with my grandpa who died just on Wednesday. Um, I was thinking about how it's a tragedy, but he was 86 and he lived a full life. There was that too. But then there's the fact that he's dying and he's scared, and I wasn't there when he was conscious, but I know he was scared. And I just thought, well, on one level, this could be, you could think, well, I'm just going to lie to him and say everything's going to be okay, even though he's going to die. On the other hand, I could tell the truth and tell him everything's going to be okay, even though he's going to die. And the truth of that is that I really believe that everything, I'm not going to lie to him and say you're not going to die, because he is dying. But I really believe everything's still going to be okay. Because I believe that people are strong enough to handle difficult things, and then good things tend to come like the roller coaster. You tend to go back up, even if you die. In the next life, you rise again.
well, like I said, I think difficulty uh, it enables growth. It initiates growth. Excuse me. And when we have like those hard times, if we didn't have those hurdles to jump over, we wouldn't have the muscle to handle them. And like I want to point out that like I said before, it's not always all sunshine and rainbows. If it was, it'd be a washer and dryer setting on a frickin' dryer somewhere or a machine, and we know that's not real.
Yeah.
Life has its ups and downs. It has its goods and bads. And like you said, people are strong. People are very strong. Stronger than they think. Sometimes
Exactly.
some people give themselves way too less credit than they deserve. Sometimes I know I was one of those people
I was
where
about
I
to
thought,
say, can I tell you something? I think you're one of those people.
I know I talk a lot of game. No, but I'm starting to realize it more and more is that, you know, um, I have been through hell in my life, and so have you. But in my sense, I like to beat myself up. I like to put myself down. I like to trample on myself and tell myself I can't do it. But I'm starting to notice more and more as my life levels out. Um, and my mental health gets more and more stable, even though it's already stable. It just gets better and better every day. Um, my wife, you all remind me that I am strong. and that I can overcome anything I put my mind to. My mother always told me too, growing up and even till now. She says I'm a survivor. And when you're a survivor like that, you've been through so much, you don't stop fighting. You keep gritting your teeth and keep pushing through, and that's what I've been doing. Um, yeah, has there been times where I wanted to give up? Oh God, yeah. I've just wanted to throw in the towel so many times. I spent time. You've seen a couple of times when we were roommates. I came in, I just put my head underneath the pillow and said, "Fuck the world."
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't work like that. You can't be an ostrich forever and stick your head in the sand and expect the whole world just to go by perfectly.
Yeah, but you were also kind of incubating. Like you were, like stuff was going on, and you were coming out the other side after, and the time would shorten. It'd be like 4 hours in the pillow. Then like a month later, you were down to like 2 hours in the pillow, and how it goes.
It was kind of my transition from, keeping my head in the sand to reality.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I still stick my head in the sand. It's nice down there. I got a nice little house, little
Well,
nest,
let me ask,
but
what are you doing? Because I do the same thing, but not with a pillow. But I know my mind's churning, and I'm like thinking things through, and I think you do the same thing. I don't think you're just in fantasy land, are you? While your head's in the pillow.
I wish. I wish there's a whole other universe down there. No, surprisingly, a lot of the time my brain just shuts off.
Okay.
I do this wonderful thing, disassociating, where I can look off into the distance for a second, and when I blink my eyes, it's been about 20 minutes, and I've been running on autopilot, I just kind of shut everything off and I let everything go, and I don't pay attention to anything around me. Um, I think that's been my biggest defense mechanism in my life, has been like, well, I'm fucked. I might as well just endure it, or just sit here and just pretend like nothing's real. But that's what I do when I mean by sticking my head in the sand. Is just I just pretend like, not pretend. I disassociate.
Okay, so
Remove my.
that's something I don't fully understand because don't I can't say I've ever dissociated. I've been fuzzy, where
Mhm.
like I've been overwhelmed by a situation to where I feel like I'm just vacant for a while and my mind's on in a fog. But I can't say I understand what you've been through in that situation.
The best way to describe it, and the most descriptive way I can think of, is when I'm put in a really, really overwhelming situation. One that I don't want to deal with because it's so tough for me, or I'm just lazy to deal with it. One of the two. Um, I check out. My mind. Usually, when a person deals with a problem, they think about how can they deal with it, how can they do this, how can they solve it. Me, instead of I'm going to answer this after I get done with this, but um, after I have the problem, I usually tend to just go blank. Like it's like I just mentally remove myself from everything, and my brain shuts off. It's like it just goes numb
Hmm.
or blank. Think about if you've ever meditated.
Yeah.
When you meditate and you have your mind clear
Hmm.
and you're seeing nothing but a void of darkness in your eyes.
Yeah.
That's what my brain's like when it goes vacant. Is literally it just goes quiet and
Can you
everything. Like I mean, my hearing even goes.
can you feel stuff? Like, do you feel emotions or physical anything?
No, nothing.
Okay.
It's like time's frozen because I'll literally check out for 15 minutes and it feels like I just blinked my eyes.
Okay.
It's weird. Um, can we pause for a sec?
Yep. I'll pause. Actually,
All right.
how do I pause? Is there a button for pause?
There should be. You just might have to stop
Oh,
the